Last year we got asked a lot, what should I be doing at this time of year? What should I be growing? What should I be planting? When should I think about breeding chickens? When should I do maintenance jobs? So this year we thought once a month we'd do a little roundup of what we've been up to on the Smallholding. Hello, welcome to English country life, welcome to the garden on a surprisingly dry day, and welcome to the first snowdrops of spring. This is the start of a new series. It's going to be our January roundup. We get asked a lot about what do you do at certain times of year, when do you do certain jobs, so we thought once a month we'll give us a little roundup of the English country life, what we've been doing in that month, and then over the course of a year it will get to build to a series. If people want to look ahead and know what we did this time last year, they can watch that series. This has been a heck of a winter. It's been relentlessly wet. We do get very variable winters in this part of England. We're in Lincolnshire, South Lincolnshire. It's kind of like almost at sea level, slightly marshy sort of area, and 3 winters after we moved in here, I think, we had -17 centigrade, we had deep snow. This winter it's barely touched freezing everywhere. It's been mild. A lot of the plants don't know what's going on, and that can create its own problems. We've had almost twice the average rainfall that we get. It's been relentlessly wet. If you can hear a slight thudding in the background, that's a farmer who's running a pump to try and empty a dike. He's been running that pump non-stop for 6 weeks now. That's life living at sea level. Anyway, let's give you a roundup of this wet, relentless winter. I'm looking at a robin that's just landed on the tripod. I wish you could see him too. Let's show you what we've been up to, how we've accommodated the weather, because it doesn't stop. Whilst the weather's been really bad, it has given us the opportunity to work on the chicken coops. And some of the older ones that we bought initially look a bit like this. These were kit form chicken coops. We bought them early on in our chicken keeping. And honestly, whilst they look okay, the quality of materials used in them is not that great. Look at this nest box lid. All the plywood's delaminated, and honestly there's nothing to be done with it but to build a brand new nest box lid to replace it. It can't be fixed, you can't glue things like that. First steps then, strip back this weather strip. Now we've added these to nest boxes. It's a bit of flexible plastic, and what it does is prevents rain running down the wall and getting in behind the nest box lid. Then remove the hinges. Again, you'll find with these cheaper coops, they're not stainless, they're not brass, they do rust, and definitely, as you can see here, the screws rust. So we'll replace those with some better quality ones. We'll keep the old roof for now, just to use it as a template for its replacement. I just wanted to show you this. If you ever have to scrape off glue or anything, get a beekeeper's hive tool. They're much more robust than decorators' scrapers. Really, you can go to town with them. And the other thing I can't live without is one of these detail sanders and a proper sanding mask. But they get into places you just can't get a larger sander. Really useful for maintenance tasks. So we'll measure up the old roof of the nest box, and we'll make a new one to similar dimensions but a better quality, thicker, stronger materials. Hopefully that'll last a bit longer. I tend to keep exterior grade plywood on hand. It's useful for all these maintenance tasks, and if you're going to do any work with that, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. Firstly, get a good steel rule. They're invaluable. They don't kink and flex like tapes do. So when you're marking up, you get a much better job with a ruler. And the other thing is for cutting sheet board, do use a circular saw if you can get one. You can get by with a panel saw or a jigsaw, but a circular saw does a much better job. I am going to glue reinforcing strips around the edge of the new roof because it gives something solid to screw into. And when gluing, I like Gorilla Glue, both the wood glue, the expanding glue and others in the set. I find it lasts long and grips really well. Nothing worse than things coming unglued once you've made them. And here's something else I really want to sort of say to people who are going to get into these tasks. What you're looking for at here in the middle of the roof are ratcheting bar clamps. It's a kind of clamp that you can grip in one hand and pump the handle, and you can hold the workpiece with the other hand. So when you're working on your own, like I do a lot, they are much better than the old-fashioned G clamps, etc., because you can work them one-handed while holding something. And you can't have too many of them. I've used 10 here, 10, just to clamp up one small nest box roof. If I didn't have as many, I would have to clamp the pieces one at a time, and the whole job would just take longer. They're cheap, you can get them from Aldi. And the last job in the basic fabrication is to put some wood stain on. All our coops are stained with cuprinol. One colour, I only have to keep one tin, and they all look, when finished, as though they were made together and they match. Now I'm going to cover the roof of the nest box in roofing felt. It was originally, and I find roofing felt gives a really good long-term waterproof finish. Tend to mark it up with chalk, cut the basics with a Stanley knife, and then I'll mark up the wrap overs as you can see here. I'll cut the corners with a pair of scissors so they can bend round, but with the chalk markings I know exactly where to put the glue and exactly where to position the roof. Once I've done that, I'm going to glue the felt down. Now you can get specialist felt glue, but I use the exterior grade No More Nails grab adhesive. It's much more flexible for other jobs. Once I've done it, carefully position, and you can see why I need the chalk marks now to make sure the wrap overs stay in place. Carefully position the roof, push it down hard onto the grab adhesive. And all you need to do, wrap over the edges, and I use what's called clout nails, nails with a big head, just to pin the wrap overs in place whilst the glue goes off. We'll fit some nice new brass covered hinges with proper exterior grade screws this time, and hopefully those will last a little bit longer than the cheap ones. And also going to need a new weather strip. Now I keep a sheet of rubber on hand and just cut a piece out with a Stanley knife, and again break out the No More Nails grab adhesive, exterior stuff, to glue that in place. And we'll fix that with a few clout nails, and it stops the water again running down the wall, getting in behind the new nest box lid. And the last job then is a coat of bituminous paint. This seals any joins, any joints where we've wrapped the corners, etc., and gives the whole thing an extra layer of weatherproofing. It's worth looking at those doors behind. It's dark at this point, and this is the joy of having a dry inside workspace in the winter. And the other thing, some decent work lights. Makes all the difference. You can see what you're doing, and you really do want it to be quite bright. But at least now all our coops are ready for the breeding season. This is the fruit cage, and these are last season's raspberry canes we're looking at. Where you can see that rectangular patch of earth, there should be a large 3x3 post that supports the wires that we tie the raspberry canes into. And all the wet, the old ones rotted out. So the first job is to dig out around the old concreted in post to free the stump and the old concrete. To do that I'm using post hole diggers because it's a very narrow space here and I can't really get a full-size spade in to do the job more quickly. What I can get in though is a little narrow drain spade. So at the end I can just free up the concrete lump with that. Now we've got to find a way of lifting it out in such a confined space. And if you look on the left hand side, you can see I've driven some screws, big screws, into the remaining wood. And what I could do then was wrap some cord around those screw heads, and that helped me lift out the old stump and the lump of concrete in such a narrow spot. The next job is to mark up a new post.
I want 2 foot underground. Then I want to mark holes for eye bolts which will support the wires at 5 foot off the ground, 3 foot and 1 foot. Then I'll drill a 12mm hole right through the post that I can put the eye bolt through to attach and tension the wires. Here I've got a stick across the ground. That helps me to line up exactly that the post is 2 foot into the ground. And that keeps the wires straight all along the fruit cage. To concrete the new post in, I'll put in about 1/3 of the hole full of water just to wet everything down. And on top of that, I'll pour in 20 kilo bag of postcrete. That goes off quite quickly. And I'll support the post while it does, and then put the soil back in and tamp the soil down. You can get a specialist soil tamper, you can use your foot. In this space, the easiest way of doing it, I've found, is to use the back end of a heavy sledgehammer, just to really firm it down before the concrete sets completely. And then what I want to do is use a spirit level to ensure that that post is absolutely square and plumb. So I'm using a fencing spirit level, but honestly you can do it with a normal household one. Having given the concrete just a little bit of time to go off, I've put these long eye bolts loosely in place, and they have a nut on both the front and the back of the post. And the reason that we do that is once the concrete set completely, I can loosen the nut on this side of the post, tighten the nut on the other side, and it pulls the eye bolt through and tensions the wire. One job I'm very behind with this year is pruning. The weather hasn't made the trees go dormant early, and the wet's kept me out of the garden. I have managed to do 6 small trees in the herb bed at the front of the garden, but I've still got the whole of the fruit cage, the whole of the main orchard, the gooseberry beds, the strawberry beds, the blueberries, and more to prune, an enormous amount. But even this small area does show that you get an awful lot of prunings once you're into a decent amount of fruit. Now, to be honest, we try and use as many of those prunings as we can. They make great kindling for the essie if you give them about a year to season. We do chip quite a lot because we use a lot of bark paths, etc. We use some for pea sticks, but honestly, once we're in main pruning, there is more than we can use at any one time. And it's an excuse for a good old-fashioned bonfire. And that serves a purpose, because what I can do when I've got a nice hot fire like this is burn up any dock, any dandelion roots, any perennial weeds like couch grass, which we do suffer from, that we really want to get rid of. As you can see here, Doodle, our new cockerel, is enthusiastically trying to learn his new job. So it's time to fertility test the eggs that are coming out. We use a Brinze Ovation 28 incubator to do that. It comes with 4 cradles, each of which holds up to 7 eggs. But we honestly don't need to test that many, so I'm going to take 2 of the cradles out for a fertility test, and we'll gather up some fresh eggs for the remaining 2. I'll pop a little bit of water in the reservoirs of each side to keep a nice humid atmosphere. And we should be able to find, once we've filled those cradles and incubated for a week to 10 days, whether Doodle is not only fertile, but whether he's successfully treading the hens. And we can do that by candling the eggs after, as I say, 7 to 10 days. And if we see development within the eggshell, then we know that Doodle is both fertile and that his technique, which can be hit and miss with a young cockerel, is working properly. Fingers crossed. Here I am, setting out some first early potatoes to chit. And by chit it means setting them in a bright but cool place to start to develop some sprouts. You can even see on some of these, it's still early and in January, but you can see there's just little signs of growth. And I want to get 1 or 2 strong growths for potato to using our sap growing method, which I'll link to at the end of the video. But it's a wonderful feeling to start growing again. And here's another one, our own saved chilli seeds, and something I haven't grown for a while, some Scotch bonnet chilli seeds sent by a kind person. So we're going to grow some Onivec, some Palavec, and some Scotch bonnets. And we grow them in modules like these. As you can see, we reuse them. I don't really like single-use plastic. And we start them early in heated propagators, because I think to get a good crop, you need a longer season than our natural warmth allows. Now, there is a few little wrinkles with doing this. When you put these modules into the propagators, they tend to overlap the edges of the propagators. That may not seem like a big deal, but you can see here there's a lip on the propagator lid that's supposed to go inside the base. So in order to get them to fit properly, you may find, subject to which propagators you use, you just have to trim down your modules a little. Now, once they're like that, you can see there's a gap around the edge, and we can very easily fit the lid on. Having done that, what I'm actually going to do is take them out of the propagator and put them into a seed tray with some holes in, because propagators don't allow moisture out, and when I water these, I'm going to want them to drain. So, some nice fine seed compost. If you make your own, it is well worth getting a soil sieve with a set of graduated elements so that you can get down to a fine tilth. As you can see, I really give this compost a good drench, but it'll soon drain away. Look at that water, you can see it actually coming out the bottom. And then probably 2 or 3 chilli seeds per module. I don't like to sow massive amounts because honestly you just end up thinning out the whole time. So there we are, 2 or 3 per module, and just a light handful of very fine potting mix over the top just to bed them in properly. Having done that, I'm going to label them. Please always label your plants. I don't like mystery plants, and I'll label them in the middle to avoid the walls of the propagator. Having done that, we'll put the modules back into the propagator. You have to go a little bit careful at this stage if you reuse them as we did, because they get heavy and they can tear open if you're not careful. Let's snug the lid on, nice and tight. But it's worth noting that you do need to adjust the ventilation on these things. Don't try and be tempted to seal them up, because you'll just get mould developing on your compost and your seeds will tend to rot. Water as necessary, get some airflow going through it. And there we are. They don't even have to be in the light until the seeds actually sprout. So I have successfully run propagators in a dark shed before now. Although to be honest, I do find that they do better if I bring them into the house, into the warm, so the propagator's not working quite so hard. One problem we've really seen a lot of this winter is algae and mould building up in the greenhouses. They're running with condensation because it's so warm and so wet. Fortunately, that doesn't take a lot to fix. Now, we've done a full detailed video on how to clean and sanitize your greenhouse cheaply, so I'll link to that and I won't bore you with all the details today. But suffice it to say, a bucket of warm water, a bit of J's fluid, perhaps some washing up liquid, soon wipes down and kills off most of that algal growth. Really doesn't take very long. And as you can see, you really can get your greenhouse clean and sparkling. That probably took me hour and a half to give it a good wash down inside and out. Now the other thing we do is we make our own sulfur candles. And when you burn sulfur, it gives off a gas called sulfur dioxide. And sulfur dioxide is inimical to most living things. So it will kill off in your greenhouse all the mold spores, all the algae, any little sort of bacteria that might be growing in there that could be a problem for the next year's crops. Gets into all the cracks and crevices, gives it a wonderful, sterile, clean start to the new year.
Well, that was January. Long, wet and dark. You know what? You work around it. That dry workshop we've got, is an absolute boon. We know we'll get all these coops ready, so these guys will be ready for the breeding season just as soon as young Doodle, just here, proves to be fully fertile, and that test will have the results for you in February. We're ready for hatching out with the broody coops. We've started planting some seed, and that always gives me some hope. It may only be chilies, we started the new season. I need to get on with pruning all the fruit trees in the orchard, but we're getting there, and we'll work with the seasons, not against it. If you're enjoying these seasonal roundups, the monthly what we're up to, can you give us a thumbs up down below? And please leave us a comment to tell us what you think, because it's really important that we do the things that people are interested in. Whatever you do. Come back and see us soon. Take care.